Anyone who has a bit of a heart and a bit of knowledge on environment in order to understand that this is a very important area.
الناس مع الهور واعتماد الهور على الناس واعتماد الناس على الهور.
When your eyes are opening beyond the desert and you see the beautiful water areas, it is quite incredible.
In January 2010, the Ministry of Oil in Iraq awarded Shell a 45% shareholding as operator in the Mejnun oil field, with Petronas owning 30% and the Iraqi state partner, the Misan Oil Company, owning the remaining 25%. It is one of the largest oil fields in the world, estimated to hold about 38 billion barrels of oil.
Mejnun, of course, is one of these super giant elephant fields. It is located in the south of Iraq, in Basra. It's in the border with Iran. It is located in the area where there is a need for significant development going forward. We have been busy. Last 3 years we have been building facilities, we are putting it in place, and we should shortly be ramping up production to the next level.
One of the many unique challenges facing the project team has been the clearance of explosive remnants of war left behind from the Iraq-Iran war of the 1980s.
And the other challenge, of course, has been really to mobilize local contractors to do the work, getting the local employment in place, making sure that we have all of the levers necessary to be able to do this in a sustainable manner.
Drilling has commenced, and the construction of the central processing facility is well underway.
Mejnun is a big field, and today we have only been in the southern area of the field. If you look towards the north, we also have a very environmentally sensitive area, the Ramsar area, and it's all about now trying to understand how we can go in and also work in that area in what I call finding the right balance between the environmental side and the societal pressure, and of course the development side.
The ancient civilizations and city-states that grew out of this rich and fertile land, known as Mesopotamia, are among the earliest known non-nomadic agrarian societies. The Ubaid, Sumer, Akkad, Assyrian and Babylonian civilizations all emerged from these lands, giving rise to the widely accepted theory that Mesopotamia is the cradle of civilization. The two great Mesopotamian rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates, converge in southern Iraq in a complex of shallow freshwater lakes, marshes, and seasonally inundated plains, making up the largest river delta in the Middle East, known as the Mesopotamian Marshes, or individually called the Central, Hammar, and Al-Huwayza Marshes. Historically, the collective marshes covered an area of over 20,000 square kilometers and were not only home to huge populations of birds and other wildlife, but also the marsh Arabs. But since the 1970s, this once great ecosystem has been in decline. The Tigris and the Euphrates are among the most intensively dammed rivers in the world. Water used for agriculture upstream has prevented water flow into the marshes. But the most significant impact has been the massive and deliberate drainage works implemented in the early 1990s, following the Second Gulf War. In fact, it is estimated that by the time Saddam Hussein's regime ended, 90% of the original marshland had been destroyed, often reduced to a salt-encrusted dust bowl. Of the three main marsh areas, Al-Huwayza now remains the most intact marshland of the Mesopotamian system.
وللعلم هور الحويزة هو الهور الوحيد اللي ما قدر صدام يجففه. ما قدر يجففه لأنه كانت مياه الكرخة تجي من إيران وتغذيه، ما يقدر يقطعها. بعد التحرير مثل ما قلت لك أهل المنطقة بدأوا يقصقصون السداد وبدأ يرجع المي. هور الحويزة أول هور رجع، هور الحويزة أول هور رجع ورجع بقوة. القصب خلال 6 أشهر بدأ يرجع، الناس بدأت تصيد بداية بال 2004 شباط 2004. وأهوار العراق هي مثال الحقيقي لما يسمى اليوم يسموه sustainable development. أهوارنا هي المثال الحقيقي لمعيشة الناس مع الهور، واعتماد الهور على الناس واعتماد الناس على الهور.
However, in 2008, the Iranians completed a dam on the Karkha River, which resulted in the Al-Huwayza marsh receding back to virtually the same reduced levels last seen under Saddam.
هور الحويزة هو الحكومة العراقية أعلنته منطقة رامسار، يعني تعهدت دوليا بالحفاظ على هذا الهور. ونتيجة للسدة الإيرانية أعلنت الحكومة العراقية أنه هذا راح نحطه بالمونترو لستة مونترو اللي هي الأهوار المهددة، وعلى الدول الموقعة إلى رامسار التعاون لإنقاذ هيك مناطق.
The boundary of the Al-Huwayza marshes, Ramsar site, which was designated a wetland of international importance by the Iraqi government in 2007, overlaps with the northern half of the Mejnun oil field. These wetlands themselves do not currently extend to the southern boundary of the Ramsar site, as water levels have reduced since the Iranian dam was completed. However, water levels can vary significantly year on year, and the reeds forming the marshes would return quickly if water was present. It's against this sensitive backdrop that Shell needs to operate.
Let me be absolutely clear. Until we know what to do, we haven't done anything. And I think that's an important statement. In other words, today in the north of the field, you will not find any facilities, you will not find any pipelines, you will not find any equipment. None of that has taken place so far, for the simple reason that we wanted really to try to understand what we're dealing with first.
And in order to understand what it is dealing with, and ensure it works to the highest international environmental standards and does the right thing, Shell has commissioned a biodiversity action plan.
The biodiversity action plan is a program that we are running and put in place in order to understand how the Al-Huwayza marshes works.
The work being carried out over a full year in order to capture seasonal changes is being undertaken by Mujnun in conjunction with a local NGO called Nature Iraq.
It is the Iraqi NGO that has the most experience working with in the marshes.
17 survey points were selected both inside and outside of the concession area, and at each point the team assessed the area for the types of habitat and species present: birds, mammals, fish, reptiles, amphibians, and dragonflies, the quality of water, and a measure of how pristine the environment is.
We are in Site 6 for the Biodiversity Action Plan project. I'm trying to do plant classification, and for the plants that I cannot identify, collect samples and press them and take them to the lab and try to use some botanical keys to identify these plants.
In addition to the biodiversity surveys, the team is also undertaking an assessment of the community use of the marshes in order to understand how the biodiversity of the marshes in terms of reed gathering for houses, reed fodder for the water buffaloes, and fishing, for example, are used for livelihoods in the predominantly marsh Arab communities that live in and around the marshland system. Nature Iraq's work is still ongoing, but they are gaining valuable insights into the condition of the marshes and its peoples. In some places, the marshes show indications that the quality of the marshes is good. At survey point 15, a variety of dragonflies have been found, which suggests that the area could be low in pollution. And in other areas, the surveys have thrown up some interesting surprises.
We found something interesting. We found the water lily. The interesting thing about this plant that it disappeared from the marshes after 90s when the marshes were dry. The good news that this is the first time we see this plant, and that means the nymphoides or water lily came back to Ahwaiza marsh.
Because the security constraints in Iraq mean that the survey team were unable to survey animals after dark, a camera trap was placed at survey point 13 in order to help understand the movements of nocturnal animals. As well as the desert fox, the grey wolf was also captured on film, a surprising discovery as it was thought to be extinct in Iraq, at least prior to the surveys. Further work to understand this animal will be ongoing. However, in other places the picture of health in the marshes is not so good, as the availability of water and the stresses on the local communities remain a problem.
والله وضعنا استاذ موزي يعني كلش وضعنا حيل تعبان. احنا تدري عيشتنا على الهور، ناس على الهور عيشتنا، يروح من الهور يعني تصير معاناتنا حيل تعبان. الله وكيلك.
Fish catch at the market surveyed in the area remain small, and in some areas local marsh Arabs travel significant distances with water buffaloes to collect reeds for use and sell. There are a number of initiatives being investigated by the Ministry of Water Resources in Iraq, but it is likely that in the short term at least, the Hawaiza marshes will remain an area under stress without more water. Finding the balance between the environment, the people and development will be key in managing this area.
It is an area where there are large hydrocarbon volumes. We can't ignore that. And therefore we have to manage this tension between the environmental side and the development side. Now we are firmly in the belief that those tensions can be managed. So it is not an either or, it is both together. But obviously before we start developing, we really need to understand and dialogue to make sure it is done in the best possible way.
The work in the Biodiversity Action Plan is still ongoing, but early outputs from the data are being used now by the design engineers to plan future infrastructure away from the sensitive parts of the field and to design them in such a way to minimize their impact on the landscape. The actions from the plan are shaping up to include partnering with local universities to gather further data on key species, and actions are planned to extensively engage with Iraqi and international stakeholders to build awareness and understanding of the marshes and their importance to Iraq.
عملية إنعاش الهور والبقاء والحماية على الهور يحتاج لها جهات عديدة، بدءا من الحكومة العراقية بتخصيص كمية محددة من المياه لإرجاع الهور. عندنا دور أهل المنطقة يريدون معيشة بكرامة. للأسف بسبب عدم وجود فرص شغل جاي أهل المنطقة دي يصيدون بشكل جائر، وأنا العالم تريد تاكل. فأنا أقول لك حتى الشارع عندها دور بإيجاد فرص عمل لهذا الناس على مود يعيشون بكرامة.
In the end of the day, it is all about protecting a heritage for the future and a value that not always obvious if you look at it from an isolated point in time. It's about sustained value in the longer term. And what I would like to see is the development in a really good manner. The steps we take today are important for what will happen 50 years from now.